You bought the part. It said it fits a jazz bass. Your Squier is a jazz bass. It does not fit. This happens constantly, and it is not because you did something wrong. It is because almost every upgrade part sold for a jazz bass or a precision is dimensioned for a Fender. And a Squier is not a Fender with a different sticker. The wood is cut differently, the holes are drilled differently, and in at least one case, the electronics are a completely different measurement system. Nobody assembles this information in one place, which is why so many upgrade projects stall halfway through with the instrument in pieces on a kitchen table. So this video is the thing I wish existed. The 4 fitment traps that catch people, what actually drops straight in with no work at all, and the order to do things and so you spend the least money for the biggest change. Nobody is paying for this video. Every topic on this channel comes out of your comments, and this one comes from the Squier episode, which turned into a long conversation about what to do with the instrument afterwards. One thing before we start, and it matters more than anything else here. Squier is not one specification. An Affinity, a Sonic, a Classic Vibe, and a Vintage Modified are different instruments built in different factories in different countries at different times. And their measurements are not interchangeable with each other, never mind with a Fender. Anywhere I give a number in this video, measure your own instrument before you buy anything. It takes 2 minutes and it will save you a return. Right. Trap 1, and it is the most common by a distance. Pickups. The jazz bass pickup slot on a Squier is narrower than the slot on a Fender. In practice, a genuine Fender jazz pickup will not drop in. The cavity is around 5 millimeters too narrow, which means roughly 3 millimeters of routing on each side to make it fit. And there is a second part to this that catches almost everybody because it is completely counterintuitive. On a jazz bass, the neck pickup and the bridge pickup are not the same size. The strings fan outward as they travel from the nut to the bridge, so the bridge pickup is physically wider to sit under them, which means a Fender bridge pickup is too wide for the Squier bridge slot, but it will fit the Squier neck slot. So if you buy a Fender Jazz set for a Squier without checking, the most likely outcome is that one of the 2 pickups goes in, the other does not, and you now own a half-finished instrument. The fix is not complicated. Buy pickups from a maker who specifically lists Squier fitment, or buy a set and accept that routing is part of the job, or measure your cavities first and buy to those measurements. Any of those works, assuming is what does not work. Trap 2, the bridge. A standard Fender 5-hole bass bridge has its mounting screws spaced at 0.690 inches, about 17.5 millimeters. Squier Classic Vibe bridges are spaced wider than that. The result is the specific maddening failure mode that people report over and over. The middle screw lines up perfectly, and the outer 2 do not. You can see it is nearly right, which is precisely what makes it so annoying. Fixing that means plugging the existing holes with dowel and glue, letting it set, and re-drilling. That is a real job, and if you are not comfortable drilling into an instrument, it is a job for a technician rather than a Saturday afternoon, which is why I would ask a blunt question before you start. What do you actually want a new bridge to do? If the answer is that the saddles rattle or will not hold their setting, that is a genuine problem worth solving. If the answer is that you read that a heavy bridge adds sustain, understand that you are about to drill new holes in your instrument for something that will be, at best, extremely subtle. Trap 3, tuners. The hole diameter in the headstock varies between Squier models, and it is not always what you expect. Vintage-style tuners on Squier commonly use an 8 millimeter hole. Modern tuners come in 2 standard post sizes, 3/8 of an inch, which needs a 9/16 hole, and 1/2 inch, which needs an 11/16 hole. That matters enormously if you are buying lightweight tuners, which is the most worthwhile tuner upgrade there is, because it is the one that actually fixes neck dive by removing weight from the far end of the lever. Those come in both post diameters. Buy the wrong one and you either have a tuner that will not go in or one that rattles around in an oversized hole. Measure the hole, not the tuner you are removing, the hole, then buy. And trap 4, which is the one almost nobody sees coming, because it is invisible from the outside. Squier bases use metric potentiometers. American replacement pots, including most CTS pots that people buy as upgrades, use a 3/8 of an inch shaft, which is larger. So the holes in the body or control plate need enlarging before an American pot will pass through. And the detail that turns a 2-hour job into a 4-hour job, the nuts are not interchangeable either. A US nut will not thread onto a metric pot, and a metric nut will not thread onto a US pot. So if you are mixing and matching or replacing one pot and leaving the others, keep every original nut and washer because you will need them. This one is worth pausing on because pots are one of the genuinely worthwhile electrical upgrades on a cheap base. The taper on a good pot is more even, so the volume and tone controls do something useful across their whole travel rather than everything happening in the last quarter turn. That is a real improvement you can feel. It is just not the 15-minute job the internet implies. So that is the 4 traps. Now the good news, and it is better news than people expect. Here is what drops straight in, with no drilling, no routing, and no measuring beyond the obvious. Strings, obviously. And if you take one thing from this channel, it is that this is the highest return money in the entire instrument, every time, on every bass. The nut. A properly cut replacement nut is a genuine improvement on a cheap instrument because a badly cut nut is one of the most common faults at this price point, and it affects tuning stability and the feel of the first few frets. It needs fitting by somebody competent, but it does not need holes. Strap buttons and strap locks. Direct swap into the existing screw holes, and they solve a real problem, which is your instrument hitting the floor. Knobs, pickup covers, and pickguards. Cosmetic, cheap, reversible. A pickguard is the single biggest visual change you can make to a bass for the smallest amount of money, and it takes 15 minutes. Just check the screw pattern against your specific model rather than assuming. And a setup, which is not a part at all, and which will do more than any of the parts on this list. Which brings me to the order, because this is where most people go wrong. They start with the thing that is fun to buy rather than the thing that fixes the most. First, a setup and fresh strings. All of it, before you buy a single component. There is a real chance that the thing you were trying to fix by buying parts was actually a setup problem, and you will have spent $80 instead of $400 and finished on the same afternoon. Second, the nut, but only if the setup revealed it is badly cut, your technician will tell you. Third, electronics. If your controls are scratchy or useless across most of their range. This is where pots and the output jack live, and where the metric problem lives with them. Fourth, tuners, but only if you actually have a problem. Either they slip, or the instrument neck dives and you want the weight gone. Not because new ones look better. And fifth, at the bottom of the list, rather than the top, pickups. I know that is the opposite of what most upgrade videos say. The reason is that pickups are the most expensive item, the most likely to need routing, and the least likely to fix the thing that is actually bothering you. Because if the instrument is hard to play, a different pickup does not help at all. Now, the honest part. The first thing, and it is uncomfortable arithmetic. Add it up before you start. A pickup set, a bridge, tuners, pots, and the labor to fit them properly can easily exceed what the instrument cost. At that point, you have not upgraded a cheap bass. You have spent mid-range money and still have a cheap bass underneath, with the resale value of a modified instrument, which is lower than an unmodified one. That is not an argument against upgrading. It is an argument for deciding in advance where you stop. The second, modification kills resale. Every hole you drill, every original part you remove, comes off the price when you sell. If you are keeping the instrument forever, that is irrelevant and you should ignore it. If there is any chance you will move it on, keep every original part in a labeled bag, because putting it back to standard restores most of that value. Third, and this is the one that changes what people buy. On a modern cheap bass, the wood and the neck are usually fine. The savings were made in the hardware and the electronics, which is genuinely good news because those are the cheap parts to replace. Nobody can retrofit you a better neck. Anybody can fit you better pots. And fourth, if you have to modify the instrument to make it do what you want, Ask honestly whether you bought the wrong instrument. A precision that you are converting into a jazz is a project, and projects are fine if the project is the point. If you just wanted a jazz bass, the used market has thousands of them. 3 questions before you buy any part. Have you measured or are you assuming? Every single number in this video varies between Squier models. 2 minutes with a ruler beats a return. Is this fixing a problem you actually have or a problem you read about? Scratchy pots are a problem. A bridge that is not heavy enough is usually not. And what is the total? Parts plus labor added up in advance. If that number is uncomfortable, do the setup and the strings, play it for a month and see whether you still want the rest. Here is the honest verdict. A Squier responds better to money than almost any instrument on the market because the things that were compromised are exactly the things that bolt on. But the parts market is dimensioned for Fender. And the gap between the two is measured in millimeters that nobody tells you about until the part is out of the packaging and the receipt is in the bin. Measure first. Fix problems rather than specifications. And do the setup before anything else. Because there is a genuine chance you are one afternoon and $80 away from having exactly the instrument you thought you needed to buy parts for. Tell me in the comments which Squier you have and what you have changed on it. And particularly if you hit a fitment problem I did not cover, because that goes straight into the follow-up. Subscribe for honest, no-hype truth about bass gear.